Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be working with the style section of our custom widget. So let's get started. So let's go back into the code editor, and I have just noted down what I want to do with this custom widget. So I have divided these into the several sections. First, the image section, and for the image section I'm gonna add these controls: width, height, offset, padding, border type, border radius, box shadow, and normal. For the normal we want to add some opacity, and for the hover we want to add some opacity and the transition duration as well. And then next I want to add some controls for the content, and I will be divided this video into two sections because in a single video it's gonna be a huge task. So I have decided to cut this down for this video, only the image and the content section, and the next video I will create for these sections like divider, badge, buttons, and so on. So for the first video I'm gonna complete until this section. So let's do that. So let's go back into the code editor, and we are gonna work into this private function style tab, and I have added here like this because the reason I have separated this, because if I want to add everything there, it's gonna be difficult in order to understand which sections is for the styling and which sections for the control or the content. So that is why I kept, or I take this function outside of that render function, of that main function, and I just included like this. So let's get started. So at the beginning, for the image section, let's grab a start control section. So let's copy this one and let's paste it here, and we also need to end this, so this end control section. So let's paste it here, and we just change this one to image style settings, and then we want to change this to image style section, and let's say it image. And this is not the tab content, this should be tab style, so that it will include into the tab section. Alright, so let's check that out into the backend whether it is added or not. So let's hit refresh, reload, let's click on the widget, and sure enough it is added into the style tab section. So let's go back into the code editor again. And the first thing what we need, we want to add this width. Now for the width we want to add a slider. So let's find that out into the documentation. So if we search for the slider, here it is. So let's grab the code from here and go back to the code editor again, and let's say width, paste it here. Now the labeling is okay, and let's say step we want one at a time, and the percent is okay. So the width initially, the default unit is percentage, that's okay, but the size we want is 100%. And then we need to add the selector here in where this CSS gonna give the impact or affected. So let's open our CSS as well. So let's do like source CSS, public CSS, and if we scroll up a bit, this is the image card that's gonna need here. So let's change from box to image card, and that's gonna add the width property into the image card from this control. So hence we have added this, we can actually remove this width. So by adding those controls we actually can remove some of the CSS as well. Actually it is not the image card, I made a mistake, it should be image card image, because we are adding only for the image portion. So Let's update this. So that's all right. So now we can actually remove this width section from here. All right, so let's check that out. Let's go back into the backend again and hit refresh and go to the style tab. As you can see, this is the image. So if we, as you can see, the impact is showing live. So if we just, this is the 100% by default, so if you decrease it, it's gonna decrease. So it is working. So let's go back and let's do the same for the height as well. Let's copy it and paste it here. This time it is for the height. So, and another thing we want is not just make it generic, we want to make it a bit unique, because width and height is gonna need for the several section as well. So let's keep it like this. So this should be image height and this should be height. And this should be height. All right, so the next thing is actually our the default height is 230. If we see, we have defined the 230 pixels, so we can remove this one as well now because we have added already. And this time our unit should be pixel because we want 230 pixel precisely. So let's go back into the backend and see what happens. So if we click on that, and as you can see, the height slider has been added. So if we just increase it, it's gonna increase, and if we just decrease it, it's gonna decrease. But another thing I want to add is to give a user some kind of notification that what is the default setting, so he can roll back into the default settings as well. So in order to do that, let's start with the width section. We want to add a description, and let's say default is 100%, and let's copy this one for the height as well and paste it here. Let's say default is 230 pixel. Alright, so let's hit refresh, and as you can see, the description has been added, so user can understand the default setting as well. Alright, so the next thing is to add a padding section around the image. So in order to do that, what we need another control, and the control name is dimension, as you can see. So let's scroll down here and let's copy this section, and let's go back into the editor and let's say padding here, and let's say image padding. I also change the margin to padding, and we need to add the class here. So our class is image card image, and also we need to change the attribute to padding, property to padding. Alright, so let's check that out. If we hit refresh, go to the style tab, and as you can see, this is the padding. So if you start to increase it, so nothing is happening. Now why is that? If we go back into the preview and inspect it, and this is the image, as you can see, padding is actually adding, but the impact is not showing here. That is because we have added this image as a background image. So if the padding is happening, instead you are not noticing it. So what we can do actually, we can add a wrapper around it. So let's go back into the backend and this is the image section. So let's add a wrapper div here, like image, let's say image wrapper, and let's take that inside that wrapper, and let's say image card, not the image but the image wrapper here. Alright, so now if we check that out, let's hit refresh, and as you can see, it is already impacting. So if we go back to the style and if we increase it, as you can see, it is working nicely. Alright, so this is working, but if we hit refresh, another thing I want to show you is that there is no default value here. So let's add the default value. So let's delete it so you can understand it, and let's add it again. So if we add it here, so if now I go there is nothing. So we want some default value in order to understand, let the user understand it. So if we go back into the Elementor and dimension control, there is a default, there it is. So it's an array, so you can define top, right, bottom, left, and all the values integers. So let's do that. So let's say default, and it's an array, and let's say top, let's say 0, and let's say top right, and then the bottom, and then the left. Alright, so let's go back and hit a refresh, and if we go there's 19. Oh, okay, that means we haven't updated. So let's delete it and hit update, and let's now try to add new one. Okay, as you can see, the default value is 0. So I think we're done with the padding as well. So now let's move on into the next. So this time we want to add a border around the image area. So let's go back into the Elementor control, and there is a control called group control called border. So if we click on that, we can copy the code from here. Let's go back into the backend, and let's say border type, and we can say image border, and let's say border, and we need to add the wrapper here. So let's copy this image card image wrapper, because we want the border around the wrapper, not the image. Okay, so let's go back and hit refresh again, and if we go back there's a border type. Now it is the default is none. So if we check the solid, as you can see, the border is appearing. So because it's a group control, so it does have some extra controls as well. So as you can see, there is the width, there's the color that you can define. So if we change the color from here to red, as you can see, the border color is now red. So this is how we can also change these settings as well. Now another thing I want to show you before I forget, if you see, when we click on border type, there is a icon here, and it is for the responsiveness. So it is now, right now the width is for the desktop mode, but you can choose to the tablet mode as well as to the mobile mode, but we are missing those things here, but we can add it easily. So let's do that. So let's go back into the backend and go top. So what we just need to do is to say add control to add responsive control, add responsive control. So let's copy this and to the height and to the padding as well. Alright, so if we just hit refresh, and if you go now, as you can see, now we do have also those icons as well. So we can set width for the desktop differently, for the tablet, and for the mobile differently. So it is nice to have, so that you can work on the responsive areas easily. Alright, so let's go back into the code editor. This time we are going to add a border radius control. So border radius control will also be kind of like dimension. So let's copy this one and paste it here. Let's say border radius, and we can say image border radius. Let's say border radius here as well, and by default border radius should be 0, and we want the border radius around the image wrapper as well. So we also say here border radius. Alright, so let's check that out as well. Go back, hit refresh, and style tab, if we say border radius, and increase it. Okay, so let's add something here. So as you can see, the problem is border radius is working into the image wrapper but not into the image. So that is why, you know, it is kind of overlapping the image. So what we can do, actually, we can add some CSS for this. So if we say here, and if we say overflow hidden, that should solve the problem. So if we hit refresh, and that's gonna cause another issue, and that is it is hiding the middle batch. So actually we cannot do that. So let's remove this. Another solution could be, let's copy this wrapper and paste it here, and let's also do the same thing for the image behind the scene as well. So now let's check that out. So if we go there and increase the border radius, so it's not increasing actually. As you can see, this is also impacting on the image as well as the image wrapper as well. So it is working. So the next thing I want to add is to add a box shadow on the image area if user wants. So let's go back to the Elementor control, and there is a control, group control, it is box shadow. So let's open it and copy the code from here again. So this is the code. Let's go back to the backend, code editor, and let's say box shadow, and paste it here, and let's say image box shadow and box shadow. Okay, so we can just copy this. That should be it. That should, you know, add the box shadow around the image wrapper. So let's check that out and hit refresh. So if we go there and box shadow, if you click on it, as you can see, there is a box shadow. So you can, you know, adjust the settings from here and also check what happens. But what I am noticing, it will be better if we do not, you know, add the box shadow into the image wrapper rather than into the image area. So let's add into the image area and let's see the results. So let's do like dot image. Let's see. Yes, it looks a lot better. So you can tweak around it a bit, and you can, adjust your settings accordingly to your visual impression. So that should be it for the styling section of image. So just a recap so that we can remember what we have added. So we have added width, height, padding, border type, border radius, and the box shadow as well. So I think that's good enough setting for this image section. So now let's move on with the control style settings. So let's grab the settings section from here and let's duplicate this end, paste it here. Let's do a comment. Let's say content style settings. Alright, so let's change from image style section to content style section. So let's say content. And that should be it. So inside there, the first thing we want to add is the the padding section. So it's basically a dimension. So let's copy it from here and paste it here. Let's say padding. So this is basically content padding. And let's say padding here, and we do not need twice. So let's go back into the public CSS, and this is the area that we want image card content. So let's paste it here, and let's say padding here, and the default is 30, so let's put 30 around everywhere. Alright, so let's check that out. Go back and hit refresh. So if we click on here, as you can see, the content section is here and there is the default padding. So if we increase it, it is increasing, so it is working. So let's go back into the back end. So now we just completely remove this one. Alright, so we can also add a description here. So let's say description, and let's say default is 30 pixel. Alright, so the next thing I want to add a header section in order to separate the title settings from the content settings. As you can see, if we go back, there is a title section and there is a control section. So there is a section between this section, so I want a header separator for this. So Elementor does have that. There is heading, and if you can just copy it from here, and let's go back and let's say title header or heading. We can say content title heading. We can say here just title and separator before, so that there will be a separator line before the original labeling text. So the next thing I want is the the bottom spacing after the title. So I want some spacing that is already there, so I want to make it dynamic under the just after the title and between the divider. So for that we want to have a slider, and we already added some sliders as well. So let's search for it. There it is. So you can just copy it from here and scroll down a bit and add it here. So we can say title bottom spacing. Alright, so you can say here content title bottom spacing. Bottom spacing here, and the bottom spacing, the default bottom spacing is basically actually 15 pixel. So we can say 15 pixel here, and we can say 15 here as well. The default unit should be pixel. So let's go back into the public CSS and find that CSS section actually, and this is the CSS class. So we can also remove this one as well. So if we go back and replace this class image card title, and also we need to say margin bottom. Alright, so let's check that out. Hit refresh and go to style, content, and if I increase it, as you can see, it is increasing, and if I decrease it, it is decreasing. So the default is 15, so we can go back to the 15 as well. Alright, so let's go back into the backend code editor, and this time I want to add the color of the title. So let's go back into the Elementor control and search for the color. There it is. Now we just grab the code from here and paste it here. Let's say title color, and let's say content title color. Title color is okay. So there is a schema. So if you want to understand what the schema is doing, so let's go back into the documentation, and there it is, schema. It's a class. So what the schema class is doing actually, there are some default settings are defined there. So there is color 1, and for the color 1, if I scroll down, there is some settings. It is the primary color of the Elementor, color 2 is the secondary color, 3 is the text, and color 4 is the accent. So if you want, there is the default color for color 1, for color 2. So if you want to use those schemas, you can use those, but if you do not want that, in our case we do not want this schema, so we can remove it. But if you use it, then the default settings will come from there. Alright, so the next thing we want to add the class here. So there it is. So we can replace with the title with our class, and the color value will be added there. So what we can do is we can also define the default color. The default color is 111, so we can actually remove it from there, and let's say default is 111, so it will be added by default. So let's go back and hit refresh. So if we go there, as you can see, the color and the default color is 111, so we can just change it to red, and the color is changing, so it is working. So just clear it, that will be the default. So let's go back, and this time we want the typography for the title. So what we can check here, there is a typography of group controls, so let's open that, and let's copy it from here, go back to the backend again, code editor again. So title typography, So let's say content title typography, and let's copy the selector here and replace it with this. So let's check that out. Hit refresh. So if you go there and there's a content, there's a typography. If we change it from there to, let's say Roboto Mono, as you can see, the title is changing. Now if you go back into the backend, the typography control has also this schema, and we are using typography 1. So if we go back and let's check that out as well, there is the typography schema. And if you can see, if we use typography 1, this is the primary heading. If we use typography 2, this is the secondary headline. The 3 is the body text. 3 is the body text, and the 4 is the accent text. So if you want to, and if we scroll down, the typography 1 by default is Roboto, typography 2 is Roboto Slab, 3 is Roboto, font weight is 400, 600, and for the 4 is Roboto, and the font weight is 500. So if you want to use those, predefined schema, you can use that. But if you do not want, in our case we do not want it, so we just want to remove that. So I think that should be it for the title section. Let's move on into the description section. So for the description section, we also want a heading divider as well. So let's do that. So let's copy this one and paste it here. Let's say description heading, and say here description heading, you can say description as well. Alright, so the next one we want is similarly the bottom spacing. So let's copy this and let's change this description from title to description, and the default is 15. That's okay. And we just need to change this CSS selector. So this should be the image card. Okay. So let's copy this and paste it here. And I guess the default is, it is 30 pixels. So we just need to update that from 15 to 30. So let's check that out. Hit refresh. And if you go to the style tab, content, and this is the bottom spacing, and if we just try to increase it, it is increasing. Alright, so we just want to change from 15 to 30 here as well. So the next thing I want is to also the color of the description. So let's just copy this title color and paste it here. Say description color, and this also change to description color. Okay, so just copy this one, paste it here. Alright, the next thing I want to add is the typography for the description. So let's grab the title typography from here and paste it here as well. Let's say description. Let's say content description typography here. Okay, so let's copy the selector from here and paste it here. Okay, so that should be it. So let's check into the backend, hit refresh, click on style, content, and the description color, if we just change it from here, it is changing. As you can see, it is turning into red. So let's check on the typography, and if we just check it like Ubuntu, so Ubuntu Mono, as you can see, it is changing. So our settings, style settings, has also been working for the content section as well. So that's all for this video. Into the next video we will be adding more styles for the other sections as well. See you in the next video.